Milan, as we already know, discussed this important topic today, and I want to ask you, how do you work with the students, and do you implement? Do you think it's possible that we can implement this system here in Gagauzia?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it could be implemented in the schools, formal education systems in schools in Moldova, and especially Gagauzia. Well, we have our own experience. And seems to me that should be possible just to use that experience even in any school, anywhere. And I just, in discussion today, I described the process, and it sounds very natural. And we can talk about, what kind of the steps.
Yes. I want to ask you, how do you work with students? What do you do with them? How to change?
When we, you mean on individual?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's as I mentioned before, the formal education works on just information, just passing on information to the students or skills. And non-formal education is actually aiming to develop the character, so that the student, with the knowledge he will get in the formal education, he would know how to really handle that and work later on in his life. And that's the best to do on individual level. It's just to talk with him individually, and not only in class, but in individual. So, and that's why we at school we created redesigned the school and created space for individual exchange between the tutor and the student. At least half an hour in 2 weeks. Maybe it could be minimum half an hour, but it could be 1 hour a week in 2 weeks. And that's the question. That's one thing, It's a question what the tutor is actually doing with that student, what he is asking for, and how he leads that discussion. That would be one thing to talk about. But besides that, individual meeting with the tutor and the student, we actually organize the groups, and we call it club, and different, and every class has its own club. So we have many clubs, a few clubs, and that's where we use the group dynamics, so that the same principles we are just striving to reach in that individual discussion, we are also reinforcing in that club level through that group dynamics. And different activities are in that group things. Mostly that group dynamics is done in team building meetings. Team building is when it's a group club. It goes out for weekend, somewhere in nature. They spend 2-3 days out there somewhere, and they have their own program to talk about. That could be different things. I can just take some detailed view on that as well. But then there is a third thing, which also is involved in that kind of the shaping the character of the student, is volunteer work. So that's there are different kind of activities, leading students to, let's say, teach pupils from Roman community have some learning difficulties, and students of our schools are helping them to have some kind of the progress in school, and they do that just as a volunteer work, you know. Or there are many others, different kind of for example, cooking and serving homeless people in a town, you know, or some sports activities, you know, that they do kind of the volunteer work in different kind of the directions. So in that non-formal education, we have several tracks how we are just reinforcing and orienting these students towards the kind of the values or just virtues which we consider are important for that students to have when he leaves the school.
So, what are these results? What the result of your job, and probably are they satisfied, your students? I mean, did they like this, or they share their experience after these lessons in team building?
Yeah, well, it's that's interesting that we want to. There are two different ways how we actually are getting feedback about whether we are doing our work well or not. You know, one thing is that one way how we get feedback is that these alumni who actually pass that high school, you know, after 5 years they go to study to universities. Many times it's just as I mentioned, you know, in our conference that maybe 50%, up to 50%, 40 to 50% of students go to study in Scotland or Denmark or Holland, you know, different kind of university, or Vienna, you know, which is close, you know, or quite a few they are studying in Czech Republic as well, and we invite them to come back to that school and share their experience in that school. That's one thing. Another thing is we have usually when these students are living longer time abroad, you know, in foreign countries, we invite them to come to the summer programs. We organize so-called language building camps. So it's students of the second year or so. We invite them for 1 week in the summer, going to somewhere into the cottage, you know, and it's like 25 people there, and these alumni, all the students, they come in and they lead that language building camp for these young students, you know. So that's how we get the feedback, if they are interested to come, and they pay back what they got there. That's actually platform where they share what they experienced while they were in our school. That's one way to do that. But another way, I started that just recently, that I go to visit them, those students studying abroad. You know, so for example, I go to Scotland. Just this spring, I was in Edinburgh and in Glasgow, met those students who left the school, and asked them, "How are you doing?" And it was a very interesting experience that just these students are pleased with the fact that even when they left the school, we are still interested how they are doing, and we just been really encouraged by the fact that how we find them. They are actually not bad students. They are actually very good students out there in these foreign universities as well. So we are pleased that all this what we invested in those students are really paying back in their life. You know, some few, not that many, but we can say that in the last 7 years, maybe 4 students, they actually back from their studies. They come back to Slovakia and they work together with us. They are part as a teachers and or whatever. They made a commitment to teach in our schools for, let's say, for 2-3 years, and after their studies. That's a beautiful. That's a beautiful. It's at least 2 students I can list right now who came back from the Western universities back to Bratislava to build our community and helping that with our teaching students today. So that was your question, as I understand. How we check whether we are doing job well or not.
Results and about the experience and how you share in between students. Yes, actually, I asked Ole that I wanted to ask you because you already said a lot of things on our conversation before. So I want to...
Don't ask another question because I will be speaking another half an hour.
So probably it will be enough, and thank you for this interesting conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.